Jason Monroe slid into the water with a quiet exhale, his muscles loosening as the heat of the day gave way to the cool embrace of his brand-new backyard pool. The underwater lights shimmered in calming blues and purples, reflecting across the tiled patio like a kaleidoscope of glass. It was perfect. Not just the pool, but everything. The lawn, the deck, the fire pit. Months of delays, inspections, permits, and irritating back and forth with contractors had finally paid off. It was his dream realized. Behind him, his wife Mia leaned in the doorway, wine glass in hand. "Don't stay in too long," she teased, smiling. "You'll shrivel into a raisin." "Worth it," he called back. "Raisin me." She rolled her eyes and disappeared into the house. Jason floated on his back, arms outstretched, eyes lost in the constellation of lights both above and below. There was no noise, just the trickle of the waterfall feature and the occasional rustle of wind through the hedges. But across the street, behind a drawn curtain in a second-floor window, someone was watching. The cell phone camera zoomed in slowly. Click, one photo, then another. And one final picture with a message already half-typed beneath it. The next morning, Jason found the email just before breakfast. It had no subject line, and the sender's address was a string of numbers and letters, a burner account. He nearly deleted it, but something about the attachment piqued his curiosity. The message was simple. "You've built something that doesn't belong to you." Attached was a photograph, him, floating peacefully in the pool the night before, taken from an elevated angle. Jason stared at the image. It had been taken through a window, across the street. Someone had been watching from inside their house while he floated half-naked in the pool he'd spent a small fortune to build. He showed the message to Mia. Her face paled. "This is creepy as hell," she said. Jason agreed. But the unease only deepened when, that afternoon, a certified letter arrived from the Grenwillow Pines HOA. He opened it on the porch as the mailman drove off. "Dear Mr. Monroe, it has come to the attention of the Homeowners Association that a structure, in-ground pool, has been constructed on or near communal greenbelt property that does not fall within your legally assigned lot boundaries. Please note this structure was not approved by the Architectural Review Committee. Unless proof of rightful placement is submitted within 30 days, corrective action will be enforced. Sincerely, Martha Greer, HOA President." Jason read it twice, then a third time. The HOA was saying the pool wasn't on his land? He looked out, at his yard. The pool was fully fenced, sitting squarely within the plot that had come with the house. He remembered the day the land surveyor came, the day they staked out the boundary lines before even breaking ground. Nothing had been rushed or improvised. "What the hell are they talking about?" Jason muttered. On the final page of the letter was a crudely drawn map, marked up in red ink. It showed his lot bleeding into a shaded green area labeled Community, Greenbelt, Protected Space. His pool sat right on top of it, marked with a large red X. "Jason," Mia said, rereading the letter over his shoulder. "This is a joke, right?" He didn't answer. He was too busy staring across the street, at the second-floor window behind the curtain, and for a moment he thought he saw it twitch. Jason barely slept that night. Every creak of the old house sounded like a footstep. Every flicker of motion, light outside sent him glancing through the blinds. He hated that, the idea of feeling watched in his own home, violated even. By morning, the pool, once his pride and joy, felt more like a loaded gun sitting in the backyard, and someone else had their finger on the trigger. He sat at the kitchen table, the HOA letter spread out beside a steaming mug of coffee. Mia stood over the stove, cooking eggs, though neither of them had much appetite. "Okay," Jason said finally. "Either this is a case of incompetence, or it's something more deliberate. But there's no way that pool is on their land. No way, Mia nodded. We have the survey, the permit, everything's on file. Jason reached into a kitchen drawer and pulled out a thick file folder labeled Pool Project. Inside were receipts, blueprints, the land survey, contractor communications, county approval forms, all of it meticulously organized. He flipped through until he found the survey map, which showed his property lines clearly, with coordinates, matching the city's parcel database. The pool was well within those lines. What is Martha even talking about? He muttered. Martha Greer, the HOA president, had always been particular. She'd complained about Jason's lawn being too aggressive. The first spring he laid new turf. Last winter, she filed a formal grievance about their wreath being unseasonably large. But this was next level. Jason scanned the crude HOA map again. It looked like it had been photocopied a dozen times, drawn with pen on paper decades ago, long before digital surveys were the norm. And yet, this was what the HOA was using to accuse him of encroaching on their precious greenbelt. He tapped his finger on the bottom of the letter. Look at the phrasing. Unless proof is submitted, corrective action will be enforced. What does that mean? What kind of action? They can't just, dig up our pool? Mia asked, half joking. Jason wasn't so sure. He picked up his phone and called the HOA office. Voicemail. Then he called the Green Willow Pines Management Company. A receptionist answered, but when he explained the situation, she put him on hold. A moment later, another voice came on the line. Mr. Monroe? The voice was calm. This is Thomas with Willow Bend Property Management. We've received confirmation from the HOA that your property is currently under review. We advise you to suspend all use of the structure in question until the issue is resolved. Jason blinked. Suspend all use? You want me to shut down my pool in June, based on a map older than my mortgage? I understand this is frustrating, Thomas replied, his tone too measured, too corporate. But the HOA has legal rights to enforce the community's common space regulations. Even if they're wrong? That's why the review process exists, Thomas said. You'll have the opportunity to respond at the next HOA hearing. Jason's voice dropped. And if I don't? There was a pause. Then the HOA reserves the right to issue penalties or take further corrective measures. Jason ended the call and stared blankly at the pool through the window. The waterfall feature bubbled peacefully in the morning sun. Nothing looked wrong. Nothing was wrong. But something about the way Thomas said corrective measures gave Jason a chill. A knock came at the front door. Jason opened it to find a folded flyer tucked under the doormat. No envelope, no return address, just black text on plain paper. HOA Community Hearing. Subject, unauthorized construction at 328 Hawthorne Drive, date Friday, 7 p.m. Clubhouse main hall, mandatory attendance required. Jason's address. In bold, someone. Wanted him out of his own pool, and they were just getting started. Jason stood at the front of the Green Willow Pines clubhouse, clutching a manila folder tight enough to wrinkle the paper inside. It was Friday evening, humid and storm-thick. His name was posted on the meeting agenda taped to the glass door, bold, underlined, and circled in red marker like a threat. Inside, the room buzzed with murmurs. Neighbors filled the folding chairs, fanning themselves with HOA newsletters. Jason spotted familiar faces, the retired couple from across the street, the single mom who walked her dog past his house every morning, the weird guy with the gnomes, and then, at the front, her. Martha Greer sat like royalty at the folding table on stage, flanked by the HOA board. Hair pinned back, blouse crisp, eyes sharp behind glasses that looked more like courtroom lenses than reading ones. She didn't wave. She didn't blink. The meeting started on time. Before we begin, Martha said, tapping her microphone, We'd like to address a serious violation regarding an unauthorized structure at 328 Hawthorne Drive, Mr. Jason Monroe's property. A few heads turned. Jason could feel the heat creeping up his neck. The structure in question, she continued, was constructed without final HOA approval and, according to our official community map, encroaches on protected greenbelt land. She held up a worn folder and pulled out a laminated copy of what could barely be called a map. It looked like it had been photocopied off a napkin. Thick black lines, handwritten lot numbers, some areas marked with X's, and a suspiciously vague squiggle labeled Creek Runoff. Jason stepped forward. With all due respect, that map is worthless. Gasps and murmurs stirred through the crowd. Martha blinked but didn't flinch. I have here, Jason continued, holding up his folder, a current land survey done by a licensed surveyor, county approved. This includes GPS coordinates, a certified plat map, my property deed, and the city permit showing the pool's exact location. I followed every rule. There was nothing unauthorized. He handed copies to the board members. Some looked genuinely surprised, others avoided his eyes. And your pool builder submitted this. To the HOA before construction? Martha asked coldly. Jason nodded. 3 times, with delivery receipts. And yet, she said, pulling out another sheet, our records show no final approval was granted. Jason's mouth opened. Because you never responded. Silence does not equal consent, Mr. Monroe. That earned a few chuckles from the board, but Jason wasn't done. Then let's talk about your records, he snapped, walking to the projector. He held up the HOA map. This was drawn in 1996. There's no scale, no north arrow, no GIS data. It's not even accurate. It shows a walking trail that doesn't exist and puts my house 20 feet into my neighbor's lot. Someone in the back laughed. Martha's smile tightened. This map is what we've used for decades. Exactly. It's outdated and wrong, Jason said, but it's also convenient because it lets you claim whatever you want. Like that my pool isn't mine. Martha said nothing, but her eyes, they flashed. Another board member leaned into his mic. Perhaps a third-party assessor should... Martha cut him off. The board reserves the right to deliberate. Jason had expected that. What he hadn't expected was the motion being seconded and passed. Just like that. Meeting adjourned, Martha announced. The crowd began to stir. Some whispered. Others avoided Jason's eyes. He gathered his documents, heart pounding. As he turned to leave, a man he didn't recognize stopped him at the door. They pulled the same thing on the Millers, 2 streets over, the man whispered. Made 'em tear down a deck. Claimed it wasn't theirs either. Jason's stomach twisted. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was a pattern, and his pool was only the beginning. Jason didn't sleep that night. Again. His thoughts spiraled as he stared. Up at the ceiling fan, its blades spinning endlessly. Just like the HOA's claims. Something didn't add up. It wasn't just Martha's obsession with the rules. This felt targeted, personal, planned. The man from the hearing, the one who mentioned the Millers, had struck a nerve. Jason didn't know them well, but he remembered the headlines from 2 years ago. Deck demolished after HOA dispute. Everyone in the neighborhood assumed it was some permit issue, maybe carelessness. But now, Jason wasn't so sure. At sunrise, he was already on the phone with a land surveyor. I need a rush job, he said. Can you confirm exactly where my pool sits and compare it to what the county has on record? The voice on the other end, a man named Craig, agreed to stop by that afternoon. By 2 p.m., Craig was walking the yard with a GPS surveyor rig strapped to his back and a laser rangefinder in hand. He moved with a quiet precision, stopping every few feet to enter coordinates and check markers. Did this survey before you built? Craig asked, glancing over his shoulder. Jason nodded. Followed everything to the letter. Looks like it. Craig pointed at a steel pin embedded near the corner of the lot, flagged in orange. That's a permanent boundary marker. Been there a long time. Pool's fully inside your property, no question. So the HOA map is garbage, Jason muttered. Craig smirked. That thing wouldn't hold up in traffic court. But the real surprise came 2 hours later. Craig returned from the county records office with a folder in hand, looking visibly shaken. Found something strange, he said. There's a plat map, dated 2003, that matches your survey exactly. Official, notarized, but it was never filed with your HOA. Jason raised an eyebrow. So, there's another map, older, that was filed with the HOA. It's the one they're using. But here's the kicker. Craig pulled out a sealed envelope from the folder. This was in the archive box. It's marked revised, not for distribution, never opened. Jason carefully peeled it open. Inside was a corrected plat, map with updated lot lines marked clearly in red ink. His property line had a slight adjustment, expanding by 3 feet into what the HOA claimed was greenbelt. It was approved, Craig said, stamped by the county, legally binding, but someone made sure the HOA never saw it. Jason stared at the page. Who would even have access to stop something like this from being filed? Craig shrugged. Only a few people, maybe a clerk, maybe someone connected to the HOA. Jason froze. Martha's husband, he'd died a few years ago, but Jason remembered the neighborhood newsletter's tribute. Harold Greer, former county recorder's office administrator, Green Willow advocate, and beloved neighbor. Jason's mind raced. What if Harold intercepted the new map before it reached the HOA? What if he wanted to keep the land classified as greenbelt, even if it wasn't anymore? Craig whistled low. That's forgery. Fraud. If that's what happened, someone could go to jail. Jason looked out at his backyard. The pool sparkled under the sun like nothing was wrong. But now he saw it clearly. This wasn't about aesthetics or paperwork. This was a cover-up. And someone had buried the truth. 2 days later, the first fine arrived. It was printed on bright red paper, sealed in a white HOA envelope like it was some innocent community newsletter. Jason tore it open at the mailbox and scanned the contents. Violation notice. Unauthorized. Water feature fine. $500 per day of continued use. He stared at it, jaw clenched. Water feature? They meant the pool waterfall. He walked around the house and shut it off just to be safe. But by then, 2 more envelopes were already sitting on the welcome mat, dropped off by hand. Unapproved lighting fixture, 250 fence height violation, 175. Jason stormed inside. Mia, he barked. She rushed in from the living room. What, now? He slapped the papers onto the kitchen island. They're fining us for everything. Lights, the fence, even the waterfall. They're just making stuff up. She scanned the pages and paled. This is harassment. What do we do? We fight, Jason said. I'm not paying a damn cent. He sent an email to the HOA board, attaching his new survey, the revised plat map, and a detailed rebuttal to every violation. By the end of the day, he hadn't received a single reply. That night, something even more disturbing happened. Around 3 a.m., Jason woke to the sound of water. He bolted upright, heart racing. The waterfall was off. He knew it was off. Still, he rushed outside, in his boxers, barefoot, flashlight in hand. The pool lights were off. The backyard was dead silent, but something shimmered in the grass near the fence. Jason walked over and knelt down. His fingers touched a crushed solar light, one of the decorative markers that had lined the edge of the patio. Its stake had been snapped in half. Mud clung to it, fresh. Someone had been there. Someone had stomped across the lawn. He scanned the fence line. Nothing. No broken boards, no footprints leading out. But that wasn't the worst of it. when he turned toward the pool. His light caught something floating on the surface. He stepped closer. It was a plastic sign. One of those cheap lawn markers like something you'd stick in the ground during an election, but this one read, "No trespassing, HOA enforcement zone." The blood drained from Jason's face. "Mia!" he yelled, backing away from the pool. "Call the police!" By the time the patrol car arrived, Jason had already taken photos of everything. The sign, the snapped light, the footprints in the mulch. The officer, a young guy named Ruiz, walked the perimeter with a flashlight. "Doesn't look like a break-in," Ruiz said finally. "No damage to the gate. Fence looks intact." "But someone was here," Jason insisted. "They left that sign in my pool." Ruiz sighed. "You got cameras?" "Not yet. I was going to install them. Motion lights too. File a report if anything else happens. But unless we catch someone in the act, there's not much we can do." Jason's jaw flexed. "They're trying to intimidate me." Ruiz gave him a long look, then cracked a faint smile. "Intimidate you over a pool?" Jason didn't laugh. Instead, he marched back inside, sat at his computer, and opened a blank document. He began typing to local news desk, investigative reporter. Subject, HOA corruption. Urgent tippy have. Evidence that the Green Willow Pines HOA is using outdated maps to illegally fine and harass homeowners. He wasn't backing down. But someone clearly wanted him to, and next time, they might not leave a sign. Jason had never seen so many notifications. On his phone in one morning, his inbox had blown up. Local journalists, neighbors, a podcast host. Even a city councilman's assistant had reached out, all because of one article. HOA horror, local man claims pool, targeted in land fraud scheme. Published by the Greene County Gazette, the article featured pictures of Jason's backyard, the bogus HOA enforcement zone sign, and quotes from the revised plat map. The journalist had done her homework, even uncovering two previous cases, the Millers and another family, both pressured to demolish structures after property line disputes instigated by the HOA. But this time, someone had receipts and a microphone. Jason sat with Mia at the kitchen island watching the comments roll in online. "This HOA sounds like a crime syndicate. Who the hell fines someone $500 day for a water feature? That map is a joke. Anyone can see it's outdated. I can't believe it," Mia whispered. "People are actually listening." Jason nodded, though he didn't smile. "They should have known. I'm not the type you push around." But the victory was short-lived. That afternoon, a black SUV parked in front of their house. Jason watched from the window as two men in polos and sunglasses stepped out, clipboard in. Hand, no logo on the car. They walked around the edge of his lawn, pausing to take photos of the fence, the mailbox, even the side gate. Jason marched outside. "Can I help you?" The taller one didn't look up. "Code enforcement." "From where?" "Municipal inspections." "Office," the man said, flashing a badge too quickly for Jason to read. "Responding to an anonymous tip." Jason's heart sank. "Let me guess. My fence is too tall. My mailbox is too square. What now?" "We'll be filing a report with the HOA and the city," the man said flatly. "You'll be notified of any violations." Jason stepped closer. "You don't find it convenient that this inspection came the day after I went public?" The man didn't flinch. "Just doing our job, sir." As they drove off, Jason filmed their plates. He sent the footage straight to the journalist who'd broken the story. But it wasn't over. That evening, Martha Greer herself showed up at his doorstep. She was dressed immaculately, as always, floral blouse, clipboard in hand, sunglasses, resting on her head like a crown. Behind her stood two board members, silent and stiff. Jason stepped out and shut the door behind him. "I thought we were past passive-aggressive," he said. "Ready for direct threats now?" Martha smiled coldly. "I came to give you one final opportunity to settle this quietly." "Oh, so now you're negotiating?" "No," she said calmly. I'm offering you a compromise. Remove the pool within 30 days, and we'll drop all other violations. The fines, the fence, everything. Jason laughed. That pool is staying. And when the county confirms the revised plat map you tried to bury, you'll be the one paying fines. Martha's mask cracked, just a hair. You don't understand how fragile your case is. No, Jason shot back. You don't understand how deep I'm willing to go. She turned and walked away without another word, but Jason could see it in her shoulders. Tension, uncertainty, fear. Back inside, Mia hugged him tightly. Are we going to be okay? Jason didn't answer right away. He stared out the window as dusk swallowed the backyard, the water in the pool still and dark like glass. We're going to be more than okay, he said quietly. We're going to finish this. But neither of them noticed the small red dot, blinking under the porch light, a motion sensor. Someone had just installed a camera, and it wasn't them. Jason wasn't sleeping much anymore, but that wasn't the problem. The problem was how deeply he was now entangled in the HOA's mess. What started as a land dispute had turned into a rabbit hole of surveillance, buried maps, and power games. And now someone had placed a motion-activated camera on his property, pointed directly at the pool. He found it by accident, hidden in the shrub near the porch. The red light blinked softly like a heartbeat. There was no sticker, no serial number, no markings, just a lens and a message. Someone was watching, but Jason was watching back. He took the camera inside, popped the memory card into his laptop, and began scanning the files. Nothing but darkness and crickets for most of it, until a clip from 3:43 a.m. the night before. He leaned closer. A shadowy figure climbed the fence, crept across the yard, and walked right up to the pool. They bent down, rummaged through a bag, and placed something on the water, the fake no trespassing sign. Jason paused the footage. The figure wasn't tall, shorter than him, slim build. He couldn't make out a face, but the body language was unmistakable, cautious, like they knew the layout, like they'd been here before. He sent the footage to the police with a formal report, but he had bigger plans. That weekend, he drove down to the county records archive, a building that looked more like an abandoned library than a hub of secrets. He walked through rows of filing cabinets and musty manila folders with Craig the surveyor, who had agreed to help him dig deeper. They weren't looking for another plat map this time. They were looking for something older. Here, Craig said, pulling out a thin gray folder labeled Green Willow Pines, Founding Records, 1987-1991. Inside were the original deed filings, zoning forms, and meeting transcripts from when the HOA had first formed. Jason flipped through them until a name jumped out: Harold Greer, Deputy Clerk of Filing, County Recorder's Office. Next to it, a signature on a zoning request, and a handwritten note: pending reclassification of drainage easement to HOA community use. Final map update withheld until board approval. Jason's eyes widened. Wait, he said. Look at the date. Craig checked. October 22nd, 2004. That's the same month my house's property line was expanded in the corrected plat map. The one they buried. Jason's hands trembled slightly. He turned another page and found a memo. Memo to HOA Board from Harold Greer. Subject: retention of Greenbelt. Control for future preservation efforts suggests delaying adoption of revised plat. Keeping Greenbelt boundaries unchanged will preserve board discretion on structural encroachments. Confidential, not for homeowner distribution. Jason stood in stunned silence. It was all there. Proof that the HOA had deliberately withheld the map, kept their power, and used that outdated Greenbelt designation as a weapon to control homeowners for decades. Craig looked like he'd seen a ghost. This is the nail in the coffin. Jason scanned every page, uploaded them to his cloud drive, and sent a copy to the Greene County Gazette with the subject line, Read this now." He didn't wait for a reply. That night, Jason posted the memo on the community Facebook group, followed by the video of the trespasser and a side-by-side comparison of the two plat maps. The post went viral within hours. Comments flooded in. "I knew something was off. So they lied. For decades? Class action, anyone?" By the next morning, 3 neighbors had removed the HOA sign from their yards. Someone even painted "liars" on the clubhouse fence in red spray paint. Jason didn't feel vindicated. Not yet. Because the silence from Martha Greer was deafening, and that meant she was planning her next move. Monday morning arrived like the opening shot of a war. Jason stood in front of the HOA clubhouse, his phone live streaming to over 9,000 viewers as neighbors gathered around in folding chairs, lawn furniture, even parked golf carts. A news van pulled up beside the curb, and reporters scrambled to set up. He wasn't just here to confront the HOA, he was here to end it. Inside, the emergency board meeting was already underway, but Jason didn't wait for an invitation. He pushed through the double doors, followed by Craig the surveyor and 2 attorneys representing a group of now 27 homeowners who had signed on to challenge the HOA. Martha Greer sat at the head of the table in her usual floral blouse, arms folded, lips pursed like a queen awaiting her trial. Jason set a thick folder down on the table and opened it slowly. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "this is the revised plat map that shows my pool is on my property." He placed it in front of them, then added the second document. "This is the memo proving your late husband, Harold Greer, deliberately withheld the map from your records to maintain control over the neighborhood." Martha's face remained stone still. Jason dropped a third document, the founding charter of the HOA itself. "And this shows the HOA has been enforcing regulations on land it doesn't legally control, which means every fine, every citation, every forced teardown was based on fraud." Gasps echoed around the room. The treasurer whispered something to another board member and stood up, pale. Martha leaned forward slowly. "This doesn't prove intent," she said, her voice low but quivering. "You're making assumptions. You don't know what my husband did or didn't do." Jason smiled. The kind of smile that says, "You're finished." "Actually," he said, pulling out a USB drive, "we do." He plugged it into a laptop and played the final nail in the coffin. A digitized voicemail from 2005, uncovered from a backup tape Craig had tracked down at the county archive. Harold's voice crackled through the speakers. "Martha, I've stalled the plat filing like we discussed. If we keep the Greenbelt designation as is, we'll have more say over what people build. Nobody's going to challenge it if they don't know the lines moved. Just keep the board tight. No leaks." The room went silent. Then a voice from the crowd shouted, "How many families lost property because of this?" Another, "You let my dad get fined into bankruptcy." Chaos erupted. Martha stood trembling, her eyes darting between board members. One of them pulled out a phone and quietly called 911. Jason turned to the crowd, raising his hands to calm them. "We're filing a class action suit," he said. "You're not alone. And as of this morning, the county is launching a formal investigation into the HOA for fraud and misconduct." A cheer broke out. People clapped, some even cried. Jason stepped outside, blinking into the sunlight. Reporters swarmed him, but he didn't stop to speak. He walked down the street, past the homes with their spray-painted signs, their torn-up violations, their new American flags waving defiantly from mailboxes. At home, Mia was waiting for him, with coffee and a trembling smile. "You did it," she whispered. Jason nodded, exhaling like he'd been holding his breath for months. They stepped outside to the pool, which now felt less like a luxury, and more like a battlefield trophy. And just as he sat down to finally relax, his phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. "You think it's over." But Harold wasn't the only one keeping secrets. Attached, a photo of a different map. one Jason had never seen before. The end.